All right. So before we begin the 6-5D notes, the title of them is Identifying X and Y-Intercepts of Rational Functions. And so I just want to kind of jog your memory on how we found X and Y-intercepts before we did rational functions, before we did the complicated looking stuff. So if I have an equation, give me a simple equation. Y equals what? X squared. Can I have an x squared plus or minus something? Can we transform this? Plus 4, I like that. So we're going to shift 4 what? 4 what? 4 what? 4 up. Good. So this is a parabola. A parabola shifted 4 units up. Fantastic. And it's really not important for the problem what the transformation is, but it's nice to throw that in there. So let's say that I was trying to calculate the x-intercept of the function that you gave me. And an x-intercept is where on a graph? It's on the x-axis, right? It's an x-axis point, which means that it's an ordered pair, correct? Tell me about the y value in the x-intercept. It is 0. Good. So an x-intercept is an x value when y is 0. If I were going to calculate the x-intercept, what would I do with 0? Plug it in for y. Substitute it for y. So I would have, instead of y equals, I would have 0 equals x squared plus 4. Now, we know that this parabola is opening up, correct? Because the x squared term, the a value is positive. We also know that it's shifting up 4 units. So is there going to be an x-intercept? Think about it. No, there's not going to be an x-intercept because that parabola is kind of floating somewhere up here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that parabola is kind of floating up on the top. There's not going to be an x-intercept. Now, if I solve, ooh, yes, because how do I unsquare the x? I square root, right? And can you square root negative numbers? No, but you can simplify them and make them imaginary. And so this becomes what? I square roots of 4, which is now, typically, whatever my answer is here, I would put it up here, right? I would put it, but I don't write that no because in this case there isn't an x-intercept. So what if instead of plus 4, what if my equation was minus 4? Instead of shifting the parabola up, it would shift where? It would shift down. And so if it shifts down, do we now have x-intercepts? Yes, and I'm sorry, this should be like right here. So if it shifts down, I'm going to go ahead and make those changes in my work. So these are all going to be gone, 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 gone. Come on, dots. All right. So instead of subtracting 4 on both sides, I would add 4. I would have 4 equals x squared. And square rooting both sides means x is equal to what? Plus or minus 2. So that means that I would take one of my points, and I would put a 2, and then the other one I would put a negative 2. How many x-intercepts are there? 2. So the whole idea of me doing this is for you to remember that my intercepts are ordered pairs. They have a 0 in either the place for x or y, and in order to find the intercept, you take 0 and you substitute and solve, correct? So that was what we did throughout the school year, trying to find those intercepts algebraically. So now on the 6-5D notes, which are going to go on page 81 when we're finished, you can go ahead and copy that down. Now we're going to do the same thing, but we have rational functions. So we have things that look like fractions. So for the x-intercepts, which we know the x-intercept is going to be an ordered pair, correct? An ordered pair where 0 is the what value? 0 is the y value. So in order to find the x-intercept, I'm going to simplify the function, which out to the side, it says factor and cancel out, which is good because that goes along with our theme of things in Unit 6 needing to be factored at the very beginning. So factor and cancel out any common factors on top and bottom. That's the simplifying part. And then set the simplified function equal to 0. Let's talk about y. On example 1, here's my function. What's it equal to? No, what's it equal to? F of x, which is another word, thank you, for y. So this is like y. If I'm setting the simplified function equal to 0, what that means is that I'm setting y equal to 0. Okay, so I'm substituting 0 for y. And then once I do that, I would solve for x. So let's see what that looks like in our first example. Your eyes need to be facing this way. Please keep your heads up. Don't make me say your name on camera. There we go. Thank you. So if I take my function, is there a way that I can simplify the numerator? But can I simplify it? Listen to my question. Can I simplify the numerator, x minus 2? No, it's as simplified as it gets. Can I simplify the denominator, x plus 2? No. Can I cross out the x's because they're the same on top and bottom? No, because they're not factors. They are terms that are part of factors. That is not okay. So I need to set my simplified function, because there's not really anything we can do to it. I need to set it equal to 0 because y is 0. At the x-intercept, right? So how do I solve a function like this when it's equal to 0? How do I solve for x? Oh, I can't set them individually equal to 0 because remember, denominators cannot equal 0. The world explodes. That's not okay. Can't divide by 0. But I can get it out of the fraction and I can multiply both sides by the denominator, x plus 2 and x plus 2. Because what happens when you multiply and you have a x plus 2 on the top and an x plus 2 on the bottom? It does cancel out. So what's all that's left over? X minus 2, which was the numerator, right? Equals 0 because 0 times anything is going to be 0. So do you see how when you set the rational expression equal to 0, what you're really setting is the numerator equal to 0? Which makes things easier. This is the extra step, but if you can identify that you're really setting the numerator equal to 0, you can go solve, which means I have to move the minus 2 by adding 2. And what is my x value? 2. So my x-intercept is 2, 0. So that's the x-intercept. The y-intercept is similar. In my opinion, it's a little bit easier. The y-intercept is also an ordered pair, but it has 0 for its what value? For the x value, good. Which means that I'm going to go replace what with 0? X with 0. Because 0 is the x value. And I'm going to solve for y. Lovely. Can I what? Say that again? I have to. But I can't just do it here. I have to substitute 0 for x in the entire equation. So I have y equals, I have x minus 2 on the top, but it should be 0 minus 2. And then I have x plus 2 on the bottom, but that should be 0 plus 2. What's 0 minus 2? Negative 2. What's 0 plus 2? And what does that simplify to? Negative 1. Thank you. So my y value is negative 1. So the concept is the same. You take 0, you substitute it for x and y, and you get the other intercept out of it. It's just a little bit trickier because they're rational expressions. Okay. So I'm going to change this to the next screen. And we're going to practice number 2. So if I'm finding the X-intercept has a 0 for its what value? For its Y value, which means that in order to find the X-intercept, I need to make the Y value 0. So I need to set the equation equal to 0. But before I do that, what do I do with all Unit 6 stuff? See if you can simplify by factoring. With difference of squares, good. So x squared minus 9 can be broken up into what 2 factors? X plus 3 and x minus 3. And don't forget the 2 out in the front because the 2 is still part of the numerator. Good. The denominator can also be factored. What can it become? X plus 2 and x minus 2. It's also a difference of squares. So x plus 2 and x minus 2. Does it matter which one goes first, the plus 2 or the minus 2 part? No, it doesn't matter. You can multiply things in any order. Is there anything you can cancel out in top and bottom? No. So are there any holes in this rational function? No, there's no holes because there's no common factors on top and bottom. But in order to find the X-intercept, I need to set the function equal to what? 0. Which means that really I'm setting what equal to 0? The numerator. Good. This kind of looks like when we were solving quadratics. We had a whole bunch of factors and their product equaled 0. So what do I do with each of the factors to find the solutions? I set each one equal to 0. So does 2 equals 0 give us any information? No, that doesn't even make sense. Does x plus 3 equals 0 give us any information? Yes. X equals negative 3. And then the last factor, does x minus 3 equal 0 give us information? Yes, x equals, how many x values did we get? So how many X-intercepts do we have? 2. The first X-intercept will be at negative 3, 0, and the second X-intercept will be at 3, 0. Awesome. Okay. Let's talk about that Y-intercept. Y-intercept has 0 for its what value? For its x value. So what do? I go take 0 and what do I do with 0 if it's the x value? I go plug it in for x. So the algebraic word would be substitute. So I'm going to substitute 0 for x. I've got, do you want to substitute into the original function or the simplified function? The simplified function? The original?
The original one.
Why don't you try the simplified function and I will try the original function? Okay, so I got 9 over 2. Did you get 9 over 2?
Yes.
So did it matter? You said yes. Did it matter which part you used, the original function or the simplified function? No, it doesn't matter. Which one seems easier? The original, maybe? So it's kind of a case-by-case basis. Sometimes it's easier in the original, sometimes it's easier in the simplified. I happen to like the original for this one because 0 squared is 0. Minus 9 is negative 9. And then same thing in the bottom. But you should end up with 9 halves, which is the y value of your Y-intercept. As long as you are substituting 0 in place of x, then it's going to be fine. Okay. So we're going to move on to number 3. Number 3, I'm going to ask you to do it in chunks. So on number 3, the first thing that you want to do is do what with the function? You want to factor it so that you can see if you can cancel out and simplify. So take a moment to do that. So first question, since you have factored, is going to be what's the factored form of this function? So think about your answer. I'm going to call on somebody in a second. What is the factored form of this function? Look at your answer. Angela, what is the factored form of this function? What's on top? And the denominator? Thank you. Are there any holes in this function? No, because nothing is a common factor on the top and the bottom. So the next step is to find the x-intercepts, which means I need to set the function equal to what? 0. Which in reality means that I'm setting what equal to 0? The numerator. So I want you to take a moment to find the x-intercept or x-intercepts for this problem, and then I'll call on somebody for it. Okay. So first question is going to be, once you set the numerator equal to 0, which is what you told me before you started working, once I set the numerator equal to 0, what are the solutions and what are the x-intercepts? So think about your answer to that. Alyssa, what are the solutions for this equation that we have? X equals 2 and very good. So what are my x-intercepts for number 3? And -2, 0. Wonderful. Thank you. And some of you did go ahead and try to find the y-intercept. So if I'm going to find the y-intercept, that means that I need to substitute 0 for what? For x. Did you do it in the original or in the factored version? I hear a blend of original and factored. So I can go ahead and I'll do it in the factored version this time since I did it in the original in that one. So if I substitute 0 for x, I've got 0 plus 2 times 0, minus 2 over 0 plus 3 times 0 plus 1. And the question came up several times. Once you get in the top, 0 plus 2 is 2 and 0 minus 2 is -2, what do you do with them? And that came up several times, yes. So that's what you get whenever you have parentheses, but the parentheses are touching. So that means multiply. So I need 2 times -2 over 3 times 1. What is 2 times -2? -4. And 3 times 1 is 3. So my y-intercept is 0, comma, -4 over 3. Good. Awesome. So we did 2 problems with me kind of leading you through. You did the third problem a little in your group and then us kind of verifying. Fourth problem, I want you to try it out and see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. All right. So on number 4, what happens? There's a what? There's a hole, right? When you factor, the denominator is difference of squares, right? So the numerator is still x minus 4, but the denominator is x plus 4 times x minus 4. So you have common factors on top and bottom. What can you cancel out? X minus 4, which means there is a hole where x minus 4 equals what? 0, or where x just equals, if x minus 4 equals 0, then x equals what? 4. So there's a hole where x equals 4, which is not something that I'm really interested in right now. Like, I don't ask for where are the holes, but it's good to know because that means that we have a way simplified version of our function. What's left over? X plus 4 on the bottom, and what's on the top? 1. So when I go find my x-intercept, which has a y value of 0, that means I need to set my function equal to what? Which really means I need to set my numerator equal to 0. Is 1 equal to 0? No. So what does that mean? There is no x-intercept. There is no x-intercept. Because think about it. If you were to, and I'm going to change my color here, if you were to not cross out your common factors, When you set the function equal to 0 and really set the numerator equal to 0, that would be x minus 4 equals 0, and x equals what? 4. But we just said that because you have common factors in the numerator and the denominator, there is a what at x equals 4? A whole. So is there an x-intercept? No, because that location, that value has been removed from the function. There is a hole there, which is why we end up not having an x-intercept. Does that make sense? There's a hole in that function. So if I go find the y-intercept, okay, so if I'm going to find the y-intercept, what do I need to do to calculate it? Hello? Substitute. Substitute 0 in for x, because in my y-intercept, 0 is the x value. So I have y equals. Do I use the original or the simplified version? Simplified is way easier, correct, ladies? Stop. The simplified version is way easier. So here's my simplified version right here. I have 1 over what? 0 plus 4, and that becomes negative or positive? Positive 1/4. So that's my y value of the y-intercept. So your homework is another 5-question homework assignment, which I think is kind of the sweet spot between practicing and not burning out. And so I'm going to pass that out to you, and it is reading time.